This is Music Matters here on BBC Radio 3 with me, Tom Service. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at classical music's place in the world, from culture wars to political battles. Well, the singer and marketeer Ruth Hart has another view for us. In America, the audience in concert halls is getting smaller and older. But Ruth doesn't think it has to be that way. The question is, how? Here's Ruth Hart.
We have such an opportunity as a sector. There is so much that the arts have to offer, that classical music has to offer. We are such a transformational art. And I think we are poised to become the solution for so many needs that society is facing. You know, the need for social connection and mental and physical well-being and social change. And we even have the science to back this up. But we have this perception problem that the world of classical music is snobbish and classist and boring. And we know this because audiences are declining. In the States, classical music audiences have declined by 50% since the early 2000s. And I think that the issues around perception and audience decline are really, in large part, due to a messaging problem and also a resistance to the notion that arts organizations are responsible for being relevant to today's society.
What does that mean in terms of what the message has been and what it could and should be in the future? Because, you know, to say, well, look, we've got the evidence that we can change your life. You could say the same for sport. You could say the same for certainly for any other field of artistic endeavour.
So I spent 17 years in the classical music world as an opera singer and a choral director. And I remember my experience of being, caught up in the joy of performing and the joy of making music and being consumed by this pursuit of artistic excellence. And I didn't think very much about the audiences. And I started to realize how much of a turnoff that can be for those people who aren't steeped in the world that we are. I've been following along on Twitter the story about the BBC singers and the orchestras facing a potential cut in funding. And it's been interesting for me to watch the outcry that's come from the arts world. What I have seen in a lot of the arguments is this insistence that the funding should remain because, the music making is excellent. And we have a long history of making music. If we're going to be relevant, and I think there is even some pushback about, do we really have to be relevant? I really think we have to embrace a new understanding of relevance. The etymology of the word actually meant to be helpful. I think if we're going to be relevant, we have to shift our focus from this old inward-facing reverence of our art to an outward-facing mission where we're actually prioritizing the need in our communities and using our art, our excellent art, to address these needs.
Look, give us an example about how you would go about convincing someone who hasn't been to, let's say, a symphony orchestra concert before that they should attend.
If we're looking to really speak to the consumer in the way that a lot of for-profit marketing does, it's going to look completely different. You're going to have to start to get to know the consumers and get to know the struggles that they're facing in their lives, and then find the overlap between what they need and what we offer in the classical music world. So an example of that, a very simple example of that would be, instead of saying, hey, we're performing Brahms Symphony No. 3, come and experience this incredible, cultural moment, it's going to look different. It's going to use very down-to-earth, everyday language, and it's going to speak to a real-life struggle. So it might be something like, had a stressful week at work? Come, lose yourself and decrease your stress with this really incredible music experience.
Does this work? Have you got evidence to say, look, this different kind of communication can succeed where previous innovations have failed?
It's hard to find examples in the arts world. I looked at, I think it was 185 websites of different organizations around the world to see if anyone was taking this more customer-centric approach, looking at the world from the perspective of the community that they served. And it's hard to find. However, Opera Australia stood out to me as an organization that's really doing this work very, very well. They have leaned into the purpose of providing an escape from ordinary.
You love a good secret. A juicy scandal is downright hydrating. You're on speaking terms with crazy, best friends with OMG, you get a kick out of catastrophe. Crisis is your cup of tea. Chaos, your kind of biscuit. You love people who overshare, overstate, exaggerate.
And they have had a lot of success. They raised their ticket sales, I believe it's about 28% over the span of about 5 years.
And if you're not a drama queen or king, you love watching it all from the wings because you love drama. And if you love drama, you'll love opera. Don't miss the love, lust and tragedy of opera at Arts Centre Melbourne.
And I think we have a lot of work to do around adapting to this new world and thinking about our traditions and thinking about the traditions that do need to stick around, and then thinking about the new traditions that we can create that are going to create psychological safety for these new cultures.
Ruth Hart. This is Music Matters here on BBC Radio 3 with me, Tom Service. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at classical music's place in the world from culture wars to political battles. Well, the singer and marketeer Ruth Hart has another view for us. In America,